So I'm going to talk about mobile. I'm also going to talk about My Supermarket and what we do, and a lot about data. Mobile, from my perspective, is the cutting edge or bleeding edge of the changes in technology and in computing. But it's in many respects, it's just a continuation of processes that the internet has already created. And I'm going to start with, I'm going to tell you in a minute about My Supermarket and what we do, but I want to start kind of from where we look in the world, and I think why we're relevant for the conversation and for this event. The way we look at the world is, on the one hand, there's vastly empowered consumers and shoppers. Many of them use My Supermarket. They have much better capabilities to take publicly available information and make decisions fast, easy, convenient. And more so, they have this device in their pocket that can help them make decisions anywhere they want. On the other hand, you have retailers that are getting more and more sophisticated. So they have vast amounts of data. It's called big data today. And they can take that big data and more actually turn it into actionable data. And I'll show you some examples of how retailers are doing this. Certainly Amazon was at the forefront of that, but you're seeing some retailers, certainly in the UK, doing a lot of that. And in the middle, kind of being hit from both sides are the brands. On the one hand, I think brands in many respects, and we call suppliers brands because that's how customers look at them. But brands, on the one hand, tend to be the last to get data. They get proxies of data from retailers typically. Sometimes they get it late. Their ability to act on the data is more limited because a lot of the actions are controlled by retailers. On the other hand, consumers typically, certainly in the packaged goods products, care mostly about the brand much more than about the retailer. So if you think of if you move away from perishables, the brand is what consumers are looking to buy. And the other thing is they crave having at least what we call an adult conversation. They want to have a proper conversation with a consumer. They don't want to be sold. They don't want advertising. They want relevant content, whether it's information or promotion, but it needs to be in the right time and the right frame. And from my perspective, that's also a really interesting place to be. So on the one hand, you're behind on the data if you're a large FMCG or CPG. On the other hand, you have this real opportunity to engage consumers in real time, and we'll talk about that. I'm going to talk a bit about examples that I'm going to share is from both the UK and the US, which is countries we operate, and we'll talk a bit about that. I'm not going to have a lot of text slides, but I don't know how to make this in a kind of a nice image. But mobile, we look at mobile as really, it's kind of scrambles away the traditional kind of shopper, brand, and retailer interact. So in the old world, or up to now really, brands had a handful of retailers that they're trying to sell. They use mass media predominantly to try and get consumers to buy those brands. There's a lot of sophistication around the products, but you don't really have control, and you partner predominantly with retailers. We look at anything around digital, but certainly on mobile is the ability to partner also with your customers, to talk to customers directly and encourage all this thing they teach in at business school and marketing around encouraging, using promotions, encourage a kind of behavior you want to encourage, whether it's people to try a new product, whether to encourage loyalty, and allow brands to do that directly with customers. So I'll talk about that. I was asked when I was putting together the presentation what I think about click and collect. I think retailers love click and collect because it takes away the cost of delivery, which they subsidize. From a consumer's perspective, it's a question of how much they're paying after they shopped online and whether they want to go. In France, where click and collect is huge, the price of shipping or deliveries is really high. It's around 10, 12 euros. In the US, it's lower. So it's really a matter of that. I think it's going to be, unless retailers jack up the price of shipping and delivery, click and collect will be smaller than what retailers want it to be, predominantly because consumers will use it more intermittently. In terms of mobile, we tend to think about mobile as kind of the starting point of kind of PC in the pocket. So we have a PC in the pocket, we can talk to a user. Let's create a mobile website because we have a website. we're never going to fix our mobile website on My Supermarket. We have a lot of users asking us to have a great mobile website. I don't want to have a great mobile website. I think if they want to use a tablet or a PC, they should. They're not going to spend 50 minutes on My Supermarket on a mobile device going through 800 items. It's just not going to happen. We think of mobile as an entertainment device, as a device that you can talk to people, and it's more akin to a remote control. So we think much more of an app and the ability to get people to do something very, very specific and not just replicate what we're doing, on the mobile device. And people use mobile everywhere. They use it on first dates. They use it in all waking hours. Hopefully, they're not in front of their computer the whole weekend. So they're using their mobile device when they're outside, and you have the ability to communicate with people who are using your apps. So I'm going to talk about some of these points, and just if you think of the possibilities from a shopper's perspective, shoppers, once they use a mobile device, there's all this breadcrumbs going on around the shopper behavior. So it's not only I'm in front of a computer, I ran a set of clicks and I've got this click stream data. Now I have all these additional touch points around where the shopper is, what is the time of the day, what is the weather, are they close to a store or not, and what they did. And it's much, much harder to run advertising on mobile. There's going to be fewer ads. They need to be much more relevant. And the way I look at it is brands need to earn the right to talk to shoppers. It's back to the adult conversation. It's not, you can't put as many ads, and they need to be super relevant. Just in terms of the way we look at things, when I look at wine, I look at an area where it's really, really difficult to run comparisons, and we haven't been successful on our own to compare wines. They usually have foreign, French, and Italian looking names, but you can find wines made from very similar grapes and widely different pricing, and this is just one random example out of many. And of course, it's really difficult to tie price to quality there unless you're an expert, at least from a consumer's perspective. When we look at grocery shopping, if I compare tomato in two forms, and one of them is becoming more and more complex. People have more and more points of view about what tomato they want to buy. Is it organic? Is it gluten-free probably? Is it local? What retailer they get it from is really important, whereas when it comes to ketchup, they're probably thinking if they want to buy Heinz, so they want to pay up for the brand. Price is an important component once they know what brand they want to buy, and packaging and size becomes important. I'm going to focus most of the conversation on the kind of the package good of the products. So just a couple of things in terms of the way we see grocery shopping in the UK. My Supermarket, I'll talk about My Supermarket in a minute. The average shopper spends 50 minutes on My Supermarket. If when we look at shoppers shopping, they probably have a recipe site open. They're doing meal planning for the week. They're thinking about their kids and their family and activities. Our shoppers tend to be moms and dads, more moms and dads. 10% of shoppers shop every day, and we see that same fraction on our site. And just some data points from Nielsen, once you move away Facebook and email, nearly 50% of people spend a big chunk of their time, their e-commerce time, on grocery shopping, on doing it. But even 50 minutes on My Supermarket is probably less than driving to a grocery store and shopping. And I got that answer on online groceries wrong, so I thought it was a bit lower, but clearly the numbers are going up. So people spending a lot of time, and there's a lot of opportunity to communicate with shoppers. Just a bit about My Supermarket. I don't know how many of you are familiar or use My Supermarket, but we're a new form of retail, essentially, from a consumer's perspective. We optimize consumer savings. We don't optimize revenue per square foot or profitability or any of these things. That's a job of the retailer. But we work for the consumer and help consumers buy the best product and the best basket, because ultimately people are buying a basket of products on My Supermarket. People, they spend 50 minutes, they're buying 40 items. They're spending £80 on average, so this is a large shop, and the basket is very important. We also want to make it super easy for people to shop. So the site itself is easy. It's easy to discover deals. It's easy to look around. It's easy to compare in any way, shape, or form. And from a brand's perspective, My Supermarket is an information layer where the sophisticated pen and paper really. We don't do any of the delivery. We don't do any of the fulfillment. We help shoppers shop. But that said, we will take your shopping cart, your delivery, your registration. In the US, we also take your credit card, and we act as your proxy, and we put it into the retailer's site. So in the US, we actually no longer send the consumer over to the retailer site. You complete the shop on our site, and you get the delivery from the various retailers. We have a lot of advertising on our site, and it's been our traditional bread and butter. And we're a large grocery site, so a lot of brands want to be in front of our audience. But more and more, we're looking to work closely with CPG partners and monetize through that way around our data and advertising opportunities. So the way My Supermarket works is we have a list here of the retailers that we work in. Well, the retailers that we collect information work with is a slightly different term for us, but this is in the UK and this is in the US. We collect information, publicly available information that the retailers put online. We don't use APIs. We collect information because we want to remain independent. So whatever the retailers show, that is a price, and based on the inventory of the price, where the shopper is, that's what we're going to show the shopper. We add our own images and back-of-pack information, and we recreate the shopping environment, and again, in a way that we think is more helpful for consumers. So in the UK, you'll have Tesco and Sainsbury and Asda, etc. on My Supermarket, and people can swap and save and optimize within My Supermarket. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we send the shopper out, including their basket, delivery, registration, etc. We did add Aldi in the UK, which is, of course, all the rage right now in the UK. So by far the fastest growing retailer. We added them even though they don't have most of their products don't exist on their website, but we decided to add them. They have a fairly limited number of products. They have about 2,000 SKUs. We have about 100,000 on our site, so we just went out and collected them. And as was mentioned, Morrisons are going online, so we plan to add more and more retailers. In the US, we have these retailers here, Amazon, Walmart, Target, etc. on the non-perishable. Most of the US market is still non-perishable. So in terms of My Supermarket traffic, and this is just the UK side, so we have about 4 million people that use us right now on a monthly level. It's compounding about 55% a year, so it was 1 million 3 years ago. We're roughly about 10% of the households use us in one way, shape, or form. Some people use us to research, some people use us to shop, some people use us for both, and more we're focusing also on our mobile opportunity. If you look at within people accessing our site, when I took data from May 2012 to compare to May 2013, so on mobile devices is about 800,000 people, so about 20%. This is just from cell phones. It's not. It doesn't include tablet, which is also obviously growing really quickly. About 2/3 of people who access us through the iPhone ecosystem, and about 1/3 through Android. So it's kind of mirror image to what I would think of is kind of the typical volume. I think moms prefer iPhone, at least in the UK. In terms of our app, we launched an app in the UK in June. Really painful process of creating an app that actually is something that people could enjoy. It's not only about making it smaller. It's not only about making the font smaller. The whole flow, we tore our app out probably 10 times before we launched it. It took us a good year. So we launched on iPhone, and we've been ranked highly on free iPhone apps ever since. We launched Android in August. iPhone is a much simpler system to develop apps on because there's only one phone and there's one set of rules. QAing several hundred devices on Android is a big process, and it's pretty much never ending. So how does My Supermarket work? At the product level, we take this publicly available information. Here's an example. This is a real example that we pulled out a few days ago from Asda on My Supermarket, and you can see that when the shopper chose this Persil non-biological powder 25 washes, we compared it first to the most similar product, and then to competing products that they have, and the user one click. This is when they clicked on the swap and save, they can switch products. We're price per unit oriented, so everything we do is around the math of simple price per unit, and that's how we calculate the savings. But you can see that this product is 22 pennies a wash, and if you moved up and bought a larger pack, you'd pay a third less for the identical product. And of course, you can consider other options. It's up to the user. We have all this information, of course, because we gather information about switching, and behaviors of a shopper. And if a shopper decided to switch, they switch it on the spot. In about 10% of the cases, smaller packs are cheaper than bigger packs. I think most of the time it's done just because there's so many conflicting promotional schedules out there. There's so many promotions in the UK. In fact, it's just never ending. So just a big chunk of promotions, a big chunk of products are cheaper in smaller packs. And again, just a screenshot from Asda, but I'm not picking on Asda. Just an example that we saw, and about how you can, for the identical product, actually buying one is cost you about 20% less than buying four. So you can buy 4 of these if you wanted 4, or just buy a smaller pack and still save money, and that's where it adds up. So typically, if you'd shop on my supermarket compared to shopping at the retailer site, you would save about 15 to 20% on identical items. People don't come to my supermarket and say, wow, Tesco Coke is cheaper than Coke, I'm going to buy Tesco Coke. That pretty much never happens. But they do look at alternatives, and they do look at certainly the same brands that they're looking to buy. I'm going to talk a bit about retailers and show you some examples of what we're doing in mobile. This is a quote from a retailer that's well known and a sophisticated CEO. But Jeff Bezos is essentially saying, in the old world, well, you could go around and hope the customer would notice the price, but that kind of goes away with the new world. And this came out in Fast Company, and I'm sure he means it. And it's something that certainly Amazon is very much pushing in that direction. Except it doesn't always work. It doesn't always work because there's other retailers out there, and they're also changing prices, being dynamic. So this is a screenshot from the US, and you can see this is identical product. Crackling oat bran Kellogg's, where it's $3.68 at Walmart, $5.49 at Walgreens, and this is the price on Amazon. This is a couple of weeks ago, and you can use our site and see a lot of examples of different retailers and different pricing. Retailers try and match other retailers' pricing. Amazon does it very well, but that said, there's no such thing as cheapest retailer. I think it's called bankruptcy. This is just an example. Again, I pulled out from the UK, identical product. You can see on the product page, this product at Asda is £3, $6.50 at Tesco. It also goes the other way around. I'm not playing favorites here, just a random set of examples. I mentioned the promotional schedule in the promotional intensity in the UK. It's we have a US site which we launch in June as well, and you can see in the same category, say baby and health and beauty, you can see the promotional level in the UK is much higher. So it's the blue is UK, green is US. More products on promotion in the UK than in the US at different levels. Of course, US has got a very big couponing culture, and manufacturers control coupons, and that's done mostly offline. In the UK, retailers have much more power around controlling pricing. And if you look at it, when we looked to prepare for this, I looked at the top 1,000 products that are sold in the UK on our site. They're on a promotion 34% of the time. They're off about 55 penny on average. Products about £2. So there's dual pricing here. When you go into a store, some stuff is on promotion, some isn't on promotion, but to a certain degree it encourages people to try and buy just on promotion. So retailers, of course, they have they focus a lot on price perception. So I decided to use a US slide, so I won't offend anybody here. But again, there's all these big statements, certainly around price guarantees, and my store is cheaper, and big savings sounds in each store. I think ultimately, from a consumer's perspective, they want to buy one shopping cart, and they've got a set of brands they want to buy. And one day it could be cheaper in one, the other day it could be cheaper in the other. A few examples about how retailers are using data in a much more sophisticated way. So we looked at own brands versus brands over the last 6 years, and you can see that green is the increase in price in own brands, and blue is in brands. And you can see these are the 3 big retailers on our site, Tesco, Asda, and Sainsbury. And you can see that the increase in price in own brands is much higher. I think retailers are getting much more confident about their own brands. Certainly, they're also taking a page from Aldi and trying to make their own brands better. But they're using their knowledge about data and pricing power to be much smarter about, about pricing. And whenever they can, they'll close a gap. So in terms of category management, they have a lot of power. Another interesting thing to look at is NPDs and new product launches. And you can see on the left-hand side is kind of killing the puppies. So the first year, how many brands are killed if it's an own brand versus brand, because we can see them coming and disappearing from our site. So you can see the green line is own brand. Retailers kill more of their own brand in the first year compared to brands. On the other hand, the survival rate of own brands on the right-hand slide is higher. So they're good in making fast decisions about killing brands that don't work, and then nurturing them later on. I mentioned switching behavior, and I showed you some examples. So just on an aggregate level, people, I mentioned, shop about 40 items on my supermarket. They take 5.5 switches. We offer on average, and again, that happens mathematically through our algorithms, we offer about 15 switches. So about 5 out of 15, which is kind of, we don't like to have too many or too few. But if you look at bulking behavior between UK and US, in the UK, about 9% of bulk deals are accepted versus 40% in the US. Maybe one reason is they have bigger homes and bigger pantries in the US, and there's a bigger kind of bulking culture. But bulk is also a way to get overall a higher price going through. It's of course a lower price per unit, but the price goes up substantially. One of the things that we can do at my supermarket is because we have the switching data, is we can create a brand matrix. We can compare any two brands, Ariel versus Persil, Coke versus Pepsi, and look at the price gap and the tendency of people to switch. So this chart shows you on the x-axis the tendency of people to switch when they get a swap and save offer, and on the y-axis the amount of saving. And one really interesting thing is category is really important in switching behavior. Sometimes it's more important than the brand, and you can see here tin fruit is people tend to switch quite a lot in a small saving, whereas stuff like spirits and fragrances, people are fairly loyal to what they like, and even at big savings they don't switch. So the category is super important to that. And of course we can also look into brands. So I just chose two super powerful brands, of course, Coke versus Pepsi, and I threw in Tesco Cola for good measure. But we can of course look at this and look at the kind of switching behavior here. And then you can see in this Coke Pepsi challenge, actually people tend to, there's not a lot of switching from Coke to Pepsi and Pepsi to Coke, but people tend to switch a bit more from Pepsi into Coke as opposed to the other way around, and about 1% switch to Tesco Coke, even though usually the price gaps there are much bigger. And again, this is an extreme example. Of course, you can look at any two brands or own brands and understand how that works. In terms of mobile, as I mentioned, we launched our mobile app. We have focused very much on enabling shoppers to do, instead of doing research on our site, writing it down on a piece of paper or printing it and going to a store, to actually have a grocery shopping list that will be a smart shopping list. It's not just milk, bread, bananas, and laundry detergent, but it's exact brands where they can do the same activities and swap and save, and they can compare retailers before they go into the store. We have about, so far we've just done it organically with our user base. We have about 150 or 200,000 app downloads. We launched this in the summer, and again, it's been iPhone and just very recently Android. So we have, this initial audience started using it, and we probably have about, between 5,000 and 10,000 people who use the mobile app every day. When we look at behavior, what we try and do is help people make a grocery shopping list really quickly, and then take it to the store, to any store they want, and make shopping decisions. If there's special offers from brands that use my supermarket for that, they can take advantage of that. So this is the shopper who shops through online. They buy, again, the 40 items and spend nearly £80. There is a component of people who are kind of commuter shoppers, and that behaves very similar to the online. So they'll shop through a mobile device, and we enable them to do that, and it's a £70 shop. And then you've got the people who do kind of go into the store, and that's much more similar to the price of buying groceries in the store, 14 items, £40. It's probably a bit higher than the numbers at least I've seen on groceries. So as I mentioned earlier, we want to make it really easy for people to create the grocery shopping list. It's not one click like a remote control like Uber, but ideally it's a fairly simple and easy way for people to make the list and be able to take into account their preferences, and then make smart shopping decisions around switching, and then shop in the store. In the store, of course, it's the toughest thing because people don't have a lot of free hands. You got your shopping cart, you might have a kid with you, and so we made it around having images are really big and easy, and you can click on the images as you buy the product. It just goes through the list. So I'm going to say a few things that are maybe obvious, but again, it's important to take into account here. There's a lot of really interesting data points that you can do on the mobile phone, like where the user is, if they're close to a store, if it's hot or cold outside, and you can make a lot of offers based on that, and also based on preferences. So because we know the shoppers, we know what they bought in the past, we know what they put in their shopping cart in real time, and I can try and talk to shoppers either through notifications or through essentially the equivalent of banner ads, on the mobile devices. So there's a lot of different ways that you can talk to shoppers, either by pushing notifications to them, or you passively, if a shopper accesses our mobile device. We're, I think, in the early days of doing it. The interesting thing is I don't think anybody has figured this out. Amazon hasn't figured this out. Tesco hasn't figured this out. The big retailers, the people walking to stores, still don't know how to communicate to shoppers in the store. It's not easy. They've got their in-store layout. Of course, they have everything that the shopper brings to them into the shop. But if Google, for example, or eBay or My Supermarket will talk to a shopper in store, all of a sudden the whole lay of the land changes. There's tremendous opportunity here, both for aggregators to talk to shopper, and of course the brands, because this is the equivalent of having the ability to kind of tap on somebody's shoulder and tell them something that's relevant. I don't remember what I wanted to say here. Oh yeah, okay. So cashback. One of the things that we enable with My Supermarkets, we enable brands to manage elements of their category directly and not necessarily go through retailers. So the ability to create bundles and cashbacks and special offers that they can do directly through My Supermarket and provide that to the consumer. And I'll talk a bit about this more, but this is one example of a campaign that ran with Coke. This is numbers that I can't mention the brands, but it's a popular brands that there was specific interest around their ability to promote a brand and how their market share was compared to the other brand, and you can see that they added this is the comparison of what happens to the product. To the green is a product that was promoted, and purple or mauve was the product that was a competing product, and their ability to get people to add that product to the list, and then the ability to actually have people buy the product. One really interesting question, and I think it's still an open-ended question, what does it mean being on the list? So if you're on the regular grocery shopping list of the shopper on an app that they actually use, and they use the app and the list on a regular basis, what does it mean? Do they always consider you? How do you get on the list? And how does it lead to continuous consideration as people are shopping for groceries? So I mentioned earlier when we started the presentation that the way we look at the opportunity around digital and around mobile is to enable brands to talk directly to consumers and essentially try and move away from this kind of blanket pricing or pricing that's controlled by retailers. So move away from mass media and try and encourage behavior that you want to encourage. It could be trial, it could be loyalty, it could be switching, it could be bundling, it could be bulking. There's a lot of different behaviors that pretty much every brand wants to understand and promote and encourage. So we can enable brands to look into all of that. The two core capabilities I mentioned is the ability to create bundles, including bundles on the fly, and offer cashback and pricing next to that. So these are all illustrative examples of stuff that can be done, but certainly you could tie promotions to trial and encourage people, for example, if a shopper's using a certain product, to try and upgrade to a new product if it's super relevant for them. You can create bundles. In this case, again, an illustration of a bundle of kids' toothpaste together with an adult toothpaste. If somebody's adding products in the toothpaste section. There's a lot of data that we have around people's tendency to buy products together. Again, they're buying a lot of products and they're buying a basket of products. So how do you get people to, what other products are they considering to buy? So for example, and again, this is data we pulled out of our system, but people tend to buy, 46% of shoppers that add shampoo also bought conditioner. But it works the other way around. 76% of shoppers who bought conditioner also bought shampoo. So, do I need to wrap it up? Okay. I'm grading cues. There's a lot of data around what people tend to buy together, and of course the ability to target people that way. And super quickly, but the ability of people to switch brands, including in real time, based on what they have in their shopping carts. I can explain that later. I'll explain that later as well. I'll just finish this, I promise you, is the last slide. So this is scanning information. One of the things our mobile app can do is also scan. And scanning is actually a technology that works today, unlike a lot of other stuff. It works quickly. So this is just a screenshot. This is actually, we overlaid our information on Google Maps. And we looked at, in this case, we zoomed in into Sainsbury's, and you can see exactly the departments where people scanned the products, what was the most popular product there, what were other popular brands, and of course there's a lot of other information around this. The ability to talk to somebody anywhere in the radius of the Sainsbury, is super relevant for the retailer. It's of course also super relevant to the brand.